But more important than the numbers were the stories. The employee who could finally afford college for her kids, the guest who wrote about feeling truly welcomed for the first time in a luxury hotel, the manager who had learned to see beyond his prejudices. As the sun set behind the city skyline, casting a golden glow over the hotel's facade, Maya thought about how far they'd come. The Grand Palma hadn't just been transformed, it had been reborn. Ms. Richardson. A young employee approached her. "We're ready for your speech at the summit." Maya nodded, taking one last look at the hotel that had once turned her away. Now it stood as a beacon of change, a testament to what was possible when determination met opportunity. "You know," she said to the employee as they walked inside, "sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even. It's making things better for everyone who comes after you." The young employee smiled. "You've certainly done that, Ms. Richardson. You've certainly done that." 1 year had passed since Maya's takeover of the Grand Palma Hotel, and the transformation was remarkable. The lobby buzzed with energy as guests from all walks of life moved through the space, each receiving the same warm welcome that had once been reserved for a select few. Maya walked through the hotel, taking in the changes that had unfolded over the past 12 months. The physical space looked largely the same. The marble floors still gleamed, the crystal chandeliers still sparkled, but the atmosphere had completely changed. At the front desk, she paused to watch the staff in action. Mr. Conway, who had chosen to stay and learn, was training a new employee. His voice was patient and kind as he explained the check-in process. "Remember," she overheard him say, "every guest is a VIP guest. That's our new standard." The hotel's occupancy rates had soared to record levels. Reviews praised not just the luxury amenities, but the genuine warmth of the staff. The Grand Palma had become known as a place where everyone felt like they belonged. Maya stopped at the wall near the elevators, where photographs now hung displaying the hotel's history, including a photo from that day she was turned away. Below it was a plaque that read, "Our past teaches us, our future defines us." Ms. Richardson called a familiar voice. It was the housekeeper who had hugged her during the transformation announcement. She was now the head of housekeeping services. "The new training program is going wonderfully. We've had 20 employees sign up for the management track." Maya smiled, remembering how this woman had once been too afraid to speak up in meetings. Now she ran them. The hotel's conference center was bustling with activity. A major tech convention was in town, the same one Maya had been scheduled to speak at a year ago. But this time, the atmosphere was different. The attendees represented a diverse cross-section of the industry, and every one of them was treated like royalty. In the hotel's restaurant, Maya noticed a young girl staring wide-eyed at the elegant surroundings. Her mother, wearing a housekeeping uniform from another hotel, looked nervous until the maitre d' approached with a warm smile. "Welcome to the Grand Palma," he said, pulling out chairs for both of them. "We're honored to have you dining with us today." Maya later learned that the mother was one of the scholarship recipients from their community outreach program, studying hospitality management while working full-time. The transformation hadn't been easy. Some employees had chosen to leave, unable or unwilling to adapt to the new culture. But those who stayed had embraced the changes, and new hires brought fresh energy and perspectives. In the employee break room, now renovated and comfortable, Maya found pictures of recent graduation ceremonies, staff members who had completed various training programs. Next to these hung a chart showing the hotel's improved customer satisfaction scores and revenue growth. "We're actually saving money," her financial director had reported in the last board meeting. "Lower turnover, fewer legal issues, and positive word of mouth have all contributed to our bottom line." Maya made her way to the Grand Ballroom, where preparations were underway for a special event. The hotel was hosting its first annual Hospitality Industry Inclusion Summit, bringing together leaders from hotels worldwide to share best practices for creating truly welcoming environments. As she checked the arrangements, she overheard two convention planners talking. "Can you believe this is the same Grand Palma?" one said to the other. "A year ago, nobody wanted to book here. Now there's a 6-month waiting list for events." The hotel's success had rippled through the industry. Other hotels had begun implementing similar changes, realizing that inclusivity wasn't just morally right, it was good business. Palma Luxury Holdings' stock price had doubled, and they were now expanding, building new properties with the same inclusive philosophy. Later that evening, Maya stood in her old spot outside the revolving doors, remembering how she had felt that day a year ago. A car pulled up and a family emerged, tourists, looking tired from their journey. "Welcome to the Grand Palma," the doorman said warmly, rushing to help with their bags. Maya watched as they entered the lobby, saw their faces light up at the genuine welcome they received. This was what victory looked like, not in grand gestures or revenge, but in these small moments of human dignity. Her phone buzzed with a message from her assistant. The latest numbers were in. Employee satisfaction was at an all-time high, guest reviews were overwhelmingly positive, and their training programs had become a model for the industry. As she concluded her speech, the room remained silent for a moment before erupting in applause. Maya could see tears in some eyes, hope in others, and determination in many. Afterward, as employees filed out of the ballroom, many stopped to speak with her. A housekeeper who had worked at the hotel for 20 years hugged her, whispering thank you through tears. A young bellhop asked about the scholarship program, his eyes bright with possibility. Even Mr. Conway approached her, his earlier arrogance replaced with humility. I would like to stay," he said quietly. "To learn. To do better." Maya nodded. That's all anyone can ask for, the chance to learn and improve. As the day wound down, Maya stood in the lobby, watching the sunset through the grand windows. The same crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead, but something felt different. The air itself seemed lighter, filled with possibility. Her phone buzzed with messages from press wanting interviews, but those could wait. Today wasn't about publicity or revenge. It was about transformation of a hotel, of its people, and of an industry that needed to change. "The first guests under the new management will be arriving soon," her assistant reminded her. Maya smiled. "Then let's show them what real hospitality looks like." The morning sun cast long shadows through the Grand Palma Hotel's lobby as Maya walked through the revolving doors. This time, there was no one to stop her, no one to question her presence. The same marble floors that had witnessed her humiliation 6 months ago now echoed with the sound of her confident steps. "Good morning," she said to the startled front desk staff, the same ones who had turned her away before. "Please gather all hotel employees in the main ballroom. We have an important announcement to make." The hotel manager, Mr. Conway, came rushing out of his office, his face a mix of confusion and concern. "I'm sorry, but you can't just come in here and—" "Actually, I can," Maya interrupted calmly, handing him a document. "As of yesterday's board meeting, I am the new chairwoman and majority owner of Palma Luxury Holdings, including this hotel." The color drained from Conway's face as he read the paper. His hands trembled slightly as he looked up at Maya, recognition finally dawning in his eyes. You're the woman from—" "Yes," Maya said simply. "Now, please help gather your staff. Everyone needs to hear this." Within 30 minutes, the grand ballroom was filled with hotel employees, from housekeepers to kitchen staff, from maintenance workers to front desk personnel. They stood in clusters, whispering among themselves, wondering what was happening. Maya walked onto the small stage that had been set up, adjusting the microphone. She looked out at the sea of faces, some curious, some worried, all uncertain about their future. 6 months ago, I stood in your lobby, a confirmed guest and keynote speaker at a major conference. I was turned away because of what I looked like, not who I was. Today, I stand before you as the new owner of this hotel and the entire Palma Luxury Holdings Company. A wave of gasps and whispers swept through the crowd. Maya held up her hand for silence. "I'm not here to fire everyone," she continued, seeing the fear in many eyes. "I'm here to transform this hotel into what it should have been all along. A true luxury establishment where every guest feels welcomed and valued, and where every employee has the opportunity to grow and succeed." She clicked a remote, and behind her, a screen lit up with images of a diverse group of guests and employees. "Starting today, we're implementing comprehensive changes. Every employee will receive anti-discrimination training, but more importantly, we're creating a culture of genuine hospitality. Your success will be measured not by who you turn away, but by how well you make everyone feel welcome." Maya walked to the edge of the stage, making eye contact with various staff members. "I'd reviewed everyone's personnel files. I found talented employees who were passed over for promotions, innovative ideas that were ignored, and voices that were silenced. That ends today." She gestured to her team, who began distributing folders to each employee. "In these packets, you'll find information about our new policies, including increased wages, better benefits, and clear paths for advancement. We're also establishing a scholarship program for employees and their children who want to pursue careers in hospitality management." The tension in the room began to shift to cautious optimism. Maya could see small smiles appearing on faces, people sitting up straighter in their chairs. "Some of you might be wondering why I didn't just fire everyone and start fresh," she continued. "The answer is simple: revenge wasn't my goal. Change was. Real, lasting change doesn't come from tearing everything down. It comes from transforming what exists into something better." She looked directly at Mr. Conway and the front desk staff who had dismissed her months ago. "You all have a choice to make today. You can be part of this transformation, learn from past mistakes, and help build something better. Or you can leave with a generous severance package. The choice is yours." Maya then shared her vision for the hotel's future: new training programs, renovated facilities, community outreach initiatives, and partnerships with local organizations to provide opportunities for underprivileged youth interested in the hospitality industry. "This hotel will become a model for what the hospitality industry should be," she declared. "Every person who walks through those doors, guest or employee, deserves to be treated with dignity and respect." Her phone buzzed with a message from her assistant. "Press is gathering in the lobby. They've gotten wind of the takeover." Maya gathered her things, preparing to face the media. She had a story to tell, not just about a business takeover, but about change, justice, and the power of turning discrimination into determination. As she rode the elevator down to the lobby, she thought about that day at the Grand Palmer's front desk. They had tried to make her feel powerless. Instead, they had given her the motivation to create real change. "Time to face the cameras," her PR director said as the elevator doors opened. Maya straightened her jacket and smiled. Time to show the world what real hospitality looks like. The boardroom of Palmer Luxury Holdings hummed with nervous energy. 12 people sat around a massive mahogany table, most of them stealing glances at their phones or shuffling papers to avoid eye contact. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. "Let's call this emergency meeting to order," announced the board chairman, an older man who'd held his position for 15 years. "We have several urgent matters to discuss, including our recent negative press coverage and declining stock value." Mrs. Chen caught Maya's eye from across the table and gave a slight nod. They had planned this moment carefully, waiting until every board member was present. "Before we continue," Maya spoke up, her voice clear and confident, "I believe there's another matter we need to address." She opened her briefcase and began distributing folders to each board member. The chairman frowned. "I'm sorry, but you're here as an observer. You don't have speaking privileges at this meeting." Maya smiled, standing up slowly. "Actually, I do. If you'll look at the documents in front of you, you'll see that my investment firms now control 35% of Palmer Luxury Holdings shares." The room erupted in shocked whispers. The chairman's face turned pale as he flipped through the pages, his hands shaking slightly. This is impossible," he stammered. "These are different investment companies. All legally acquired and controlled by my corporation," Maya explained calmly. "And with the proxy votes I've gathered from other shareholders, plus the support of several board members, I now have a controlling interest in this company." The CEO, who had been quietly observing until now, jumped to his feet. "This is some kind of hostile takeover. We'll fight this in court." "Everything has been done completely legally," Maya's legal advisor spoke up, pulling out additional documentation. "We've followed every SEC regulation and corporate bylaw to the letter. Ms. Richardson has the right to call for immediate changes in company leadership." The room fell silent as the reality of the situation sank in. Maya remained standing, her presence commanding attention. "6 months ago," she began, "I was humiliated and turned away from the Grand Palmer Hotel, despite having a confirmed reservation and being a keynote speaker at a major conference. That day, I discovered this wasn't an isolated incident. This company has a long history of discrimination, hidden behind settlements and non-disclosure agreements." She pulled up a presentation on the room's large screen, showing graphs of declining occupancy rates and customer satisfaction scores. Your discriminatory practices aren't just morally wrong, they're bad for business. While your competitors have embraced diversity and inclusion, you've clung to outdated prejudices. As a result, your stock price has fallen, your reputation has suffered, and your market share is shrinking. The chairman attempted to interrupt, but Maya held up her hand. I'm not finished. Today, we're going to vote on new leadership. I have letters of resignation prepared for those who wish to step down gracefully. For those who want to be part of the solution rather than the problem, I offer the opportunity to be part of this company's transformation. Mrs. Chen stood up next. I second the motion for new leadership. One by one, other board members began to show their support. The chairman looked around the room, realizing he was losing control. You can't just walk in here and take over. We built this company. No, Maya corrected him. The people who clean your rooms, serve your guests, and work at your front desks built this company. The countless travelers who chose your hotels built this company, and you've betrayed their trust with your discriminatory practices. She walked around the table, her heels clicking on the marble floor. I'm not here to destroy the Grand Palma Hotel or Palma Luxury Holdings. I'm here to make it better. To make it live up to its potential as a truly luxury experience, one that welcomes everyone. Over the next hour, votes were cast, resignations were submitted, and new leadership was installed. Maya watched as the old guard slowly filed out of the boardroom, their era of discrimination ending not with a bang, but with a whimper. Congratulations, Madam Chairwoman, Mrs. Chen said softly as the last of the old board members left. Maya looked around the now empty boardroom, thinking about all the work ahead. This is just the beginning, she replied. Now comes the real challenge, transforming this company from the inside out. Maya picked up a framed photo from her desk. It showed her standing in front of her first office, a tiny space she'd rented when starting Innovatech. She'd come so far since then, but some things hadn't changed. She still faced the same prejudices, the same barriers. But now she had the power to do something about it. Ms. Richardson, her assistant called from the door. Your car is ready. Maya gathered her things, taking one last look at the financial reports. Her firms now controlled nearly 35% of Palma Luxury Holdings shares. Combined with the support they'd gathered from other shareholders and board members, they had a clear majority. As her car pulled away from her office building, Maya thought about all the people who had faced discrimination at the Grand Palma and other hotels in the chain. People who didn't have the resources to fight back, who had to swallow their dignity and walk away. Not anymore, she whispered to herself. Her driver took a route that passed by the Grand Palma. The hotel stood proud and elegant as ever, its staff going about their usual routine, unaware that by the end of the day, everything would change. Maya's phone buzzed again. Another message from Mrs. Chen. Board members arriving now. Some look nervous. They know something's coming, but they don't know what. Looking at the hotel through her car window, Maya felt a surge of determination. This wasn't just about revenge or proving a point. It was about creating real change, about transforming an institution from a symbol of discrimination into a model of inclusion. Ready for the board meeting? Her legal advisor asked as they pulled up to Palma Luxury Holdings corporate headquarters. Maya straightened her jacket and grabbed her briefcase, filled with the documents that would reshape the company's future. They weren't ready for me 6 months ago, she said with a confident smile. They're definitely not ready for me now. Maya's office buzzed with energy as she gathered her most trusted advisors for the next phase of her plan. The morning sun streamed through the windows, illuminating the dozens of documents and charts spread across her conference table. 6 months had passed since that day at the Grand Palma, and everything was falling into place. Let's review our position, she said, pulling up a detailed presentation on the screen. Her investment director, a sharp-minded woman with 20 years of experience, stood up to brief the team. We've successfully acquired 15% of Palma Luxury Holdings through various investment firms, she explained, pointing to a complex chart of ownership structures. Nobody has noticed because we've kept each purchase below the reporting threshold. The market thinks these are just regular institutional investors adjusting their portfolios. Maya nodded, remembering the countless late nights spent planning these moves. They had created 5 different investment companies, each appearing completely independent, to buy shares without raising suspicion. "What about the board members?" Maya asked, turning to her legal advisor. "Mrs. Chen has been invaluable," he replied, shuffling through his notes. "Through her connections, we've identified 3 other board members who are unhappy with the current management. They're ready to support new leadership when the time comes." The room grew quiet as Maya pulled up the next slide, their financial analysis of the hotel chain. The numbers told a clear story. Palmer Luxury Holdings was struggling. Their old-fashioned approach and discriminatory practices weren't just morally wrong, they were bad for business. Room occupancy is down 12% compared to their competitors, Maya's analyst pointed out. They're losing market share to more inclusive hotel chains, especially among younger travelers and international guests. The board can't ignore these numbers forever. Maya walked to the window, looking out at the city skyline. Somewhere out there, the Grand Palmer Hotel was still operating as it always had, unaware that its days of discrimination were numbered. "Time for Phase 2, she announced, turning back to her team. "Let's make our move." Over the next few weeks, Maya's plan unfolded like a perfectly choreographed dance. Her investment firms began buying larger blocks of shares, still carefully staying under the radar. The market started to notice the increased trading activity, but nobody could connect the dots. Then came the anonymous tip to a financial blog about Palmer Luxury Holdings' discrimination settlements. The story spread quickly, causing their stock price to dip further. Maya watched as more shareholders began selling their positions, creating the perfect opportunity for her firms to buy more shares. "We're now at 28% ownership," her investment director reported one morning. "And we've confirmed that 3 major institutional investors are looking to sell. They don't want the PR headache of being associated with discrimination scandals." Maya smiled, remembering how the hotel manager had dismissed her. If only he knew that his actions that day had set this whole plan in motion. Her phone buzzed with a message from Mrs. Chen. "Emergency board meeting called for next week. They're finally starting to panic." The next few days were intense. Maya's team worked around the clock, preparing documents, coordinating with allies on the board, and finalizing their strategy. They knew they would only get one chance to do this right. On the morning of the board meeting, Maya sat in her office, reviewing every detail one last time. Her phone kept lighting up with messages from her various teams, all confirming that everything was in place. "The proxy firms are ready," her legal advisor reported. "When we reveal our consolidated ownership at the meeting, we'll have enough votes to force changes." Back at her office, Maya called an emergency meeting with her executive team. "We've been approaching this like a tech company," she told them. "But hotels are about people. Every person who walks through those doors has a story, has dignity, has worth. The Grand Palmer forgot that. We're going to remind them." She pulled up a presentation on the large screen in her office. Palmer Luxury Holdings has vulnerabilities in their corporate structure. Their stock is undervalued, their board is divided, and their biggest shareholders are getting nervous. But their biggest weakness isn't financial, it's moral. They've forgotten what hospitality means. Her team watched as she outlined her plan. It wasn't just about buying shares or gaining control. It was about transforming an entire culture. "We're going to do this right," she explained. "Legal, ethical, and completely by the book. When we're done, the Grand Palmer won't just be another luxury hotel. It's going to be a model for what the hospitality industry should be." As she drove home that evening, Maya passed by the Grand Palmer. The building still sparkled in the setting sun, its windows reflecting the golden light. But now she saw past the glamour to the truth beneath, and the potential for what it could become. Her phone buzzed with a message from her financial team. They'd identified a way to begin acquiring shares through a series of smaller investment firms. The plan was taking shape. Maya smiled as she thought about that day at the hotel's front desk. They had tried to make her feel small, insignificant, unwelcome. Instead, they had given her a new purpose. Sometimes the best way to fight discrimination wasn't with anger or public outcry, but with quiet, methodical determination. The Grand Palmer thought they were getting rid of a problem, she said to herself as she watched the hotel disappear in her rearview mirror. Instead, they were creating their own solution, They just don't know it yet. The next few weeks passed in a blur of activity as Maya dove deep into her investigation of the Grand Palma hotel chain. Her corner office became a command center, walls covered with documents, financial reports, and sticky notes mapping out connections and patterns. "You need to see this," her head researcher said one morning, dropping a thick folder on Maya's desk. "We've found at least 30 similar complaints in the past year alone. Most were settled quietly, but there's a pattern here." Maya leaned forward, flipping through the pages. Each complaint told a similar story: qualified guests turned away, reservations mysteriously lost, room upgrades given to other customers, while minorities were told the hotel was fully booked. The Grand Palma's discrimination wasn't just personal, it was systematic. "What's interesting," her researcher continued, pulling out specific documents, "is how they've managed to keep this quiet. Their parent company, Palma Luxury Holdings, has a whole team dedicated to handling these incidents. They pay settlements, but never admit wrongdoing." Maya nodded, her mind already racing ahead. "And what about their financial situation?" Her financial advisor, who had been quietly analyzing data on her laptop, spoke up. "That's where things get really interesting. Palma Luxury Holdings is in trouble. They've overextended themselves with new properties in Europe, and their occupancy rates are dropping. Their stock has fallen 15% in the last quarter alone." Maya walked to her window, watching the city bustle below. She built her tech company by identifying problems and creating solutions. Now she was seeing a different kind of problem, one that needed a different kind of solution. "Get me a meeting with our investment team," she said, turning back to face her staff. "And contact our friends at Anderson Capital. I want to know if they'd be interested in a joint venture." Over the next few days, Maya barely left her office. She ordered in meals, worked late into the night, and started early each morning. Her team watched in amazement as she applied the same intense focus that had built Innovat Tech to this new mission. "Look at their board structure," she told her legal team during one late-night strategy session. 5 of their 9 board members are up for re-election next quarter, and their biggest institutional investor just reduced their position. There's an opportunity here. But Maya wasn't just looking at numbers and legal documents. She was also listening to stories. Her team had set up confidential interviews with former employees of the Grand Palma, and each conversation revealed more about the hotel's toxic culture. "They told us to profile guests at check-in," one former front desk manager admitted during a video call. "They never put it in writing, but the message was clear. They wanted to maintain a certain image." Maya recorded everything, built her case methodically. She wasn't just planning a takeover, she was planning a transformation. 1 month into her investigation, she received an unexpected call. A board member from Palma Luxury Holdings wanted to meet, quietly, away from corporate offices. Maya agreed to the meeting at a small cafe across town. The board member, an elderly woman named Mrs. Chen, looked nervous as she stirred her tea. "I've been on the board for 15 years, she said quietly. "I've tried to change things from the inside, but the old guard is too entrenched. When I heard about what happened to you, and then learned about your investigation," she paused, looking directly at Maya, "maybe you're exactly what this company needs." Maya listened carefully as Mrs. Chen detailed the company's internal struggles, the divided board, the resistance to change. Each piece of information was another tool in her arsenal. She smiled as she read through the financial statements. The hotel chain's weakness would be her opportunity. They had seen her as someone they could dismiss, but they had no idea who they were dealing with. Maya hadn't built a billion-dollar company by backing down from challenges. Her phone lit up with a message. The video link for tomorrow's keynote was set up. She would address the conference remotely, and while the hotel management might think they'd won this round, Maya knew better. This was just the beginning. As she prepared for bed that night, Maya thought about all the other people who had faced similar discrimination but didn't have the resources to fight back. She thought about the young entrepreneurs who might give up on their dreams after facing such treatment, the professionals who might doubt their worth because of someone else's prejudice. Tomorrow, she would give her keynote speech about innovation in healthcare technology, but she was already planning a different kind of innovation, one that would transform the very industry that had tried to shut her out. "They think they've humiliated me," she said to herself, looking at the night skyline where the Grand Palmer's lights shone bright. But they've just given me my next mission. She set her alarm for early the next morning. There was work to be done, a battle to be fought not with protests or public outrage, but with the same business acumen that had made her successful in the first place. The Grand Palmer Hotel had no idea, but they just set in motion their own transformation, and Maya Richardson would be the one leading it. The whispers followed Maya as she walked out of the Grand Palmer Hotel, carried by the morning breeze along with the barely concealed snickers of the hotel staff. She could hear them through the grand lobby's open doors, snippets of conversation that made her blood boil, but her resolve stronger. "I can't believe she thought she could stay here," one voice drifted out. "Did you see her try to prove she was a conference speaker?" Another added with a laugh. Maya took a deep breath of the crisp morning air, reminding herself that she'd faced worse obstacles on her path to success. Standing on the sidewalk, she watched as other guests continued to stream in and out of the hotel's revolving doors, each receiving the warm welcome that had been denied to her. A young couple, clearly tourists, were being treated like royalty while the bellhop rushed to help with their modest luggage. Her phone buzzed. It was her assistant, wondering why she wasn't at the pre-conference meeting. Maya's fingers hovered over the screen for a moment before she typed out a response explaining the situation. Within seconds, her phone exploded with messages of outrage and support from her team. "Ma'am, you need to move along," a security guard said, approaching her with his hand raised. "Mr. Conway has asked that you leave the premises immediately." Maya turned to face him, maintaining her dignity despite the growing crowd of onlookers. Hotel guests had stopped to watch the scene unfold, some pulling out their phones to record. She could feel the weight of their stares, some sympathetic, others judgmental, many just curious about the well-dressed woman being asked to leave. "Of course," she replied calmly, her voice carrying across the now quiet entrance area. "I wouldn't want to make anyone uncomfortable by my presence." The irony in her tone was subtle but unmistakable. As she walked toward her car, she overheard a group of conference attendees discussing the upcoming keynote speech, her keynote speech. They were excited about hearing from the CEO of Innovatech Solutions, unaware that they'd just witnessed that same CEO being turned away from the hotel. Her driver, David, had been watching the whole scene unfold. He opened the car door for her, his face a mixture of anger and concern. "Ms. Richardson, I've been driving for this company for 20 years, and I've never seen anything like this. Should I call your lawyer?" Maya settled into the back seat, her mind already racing with plans. "No, David, not yet. Take me to the office instead." She pulled out her tablet, beginning to type furiously. This incident wouldn't be buried or forgotten like so many others. Back in her office, Maya's team gathered around her, their faces showing a mix of concern and determination. Her marketing director, a woman who had faced similar discrimination in her own career, was particularly vocal. "We need to go public with this," she insisted. Social media would explode. The press would have a field day. Billion-dollar CEO denied hotel access because of discrimination. But Maya held up her hand, silencing the suggestions. "No," she said firmly. "We're not going to fight this battle in the court of public opinion. We're going to do something much more effective." She walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows of her office, looking out over the Atlanta skyline. The Grand Palmer Hotel was visible in the distance, its gleaming towers now seeming less impressive and more like a challenge to be overcome. "Get me everything you can find on the Grand Palmer Hotel chain," she instructed her team. "Ownership structure, financial reports, stock prices, discrimination complaints, everything. And get our financial team in here. We're going to look at their vulnerabilities." As her team dispersed to gather information, Maya received a call from the conference organizers, apologizing profusely for the hotel's behavior and offering to move the entire conference to another venue. But Maya had a different idea. "Keep the conference there," she told them. "But I won't be giving the keynote in person. Set up a video link instead." That evening, as the sun set over Atlanta, Maya sat in her home office, reviewing the preliminary reports her team had gathered. The Grand Palmer Hotel chain had a history of similar incidents, all carefully buried under settlements and non-disclosure agreements. Their parent company was overleveraged, their stock price was wobbling, and their board was divided over the direction of the company. Maya took one last look around the opulent lobby, memorizing every detail. The crystal chandelier, the marble floors, the gilt-edged mirrors, all of it. She allowed herself a small smile as she turned to leave, her mind already formulating a plan. As she walked out through the revolving doors, Maya pulled out her phone again, not to show another confirmation email, but to call her financial advisor. The Grand Palma Hotel had just made a serious mistake, though they didn't know it yet. They saw her as just another person they could dismiss, but Maya Richardson hadn't become a billionaire by letting others define her limits. She paused on the sidewalk, watching as her SUV was brought around. A group of conference attendees brushed past her, chattering excitedly about tomorrow's events. They had no idea that the keynote speaker they were looking forward to hearing was standing right there, being turned away from her own hotel reservation. As she slid into her vehicle, Maya wasn't angry. She was inspired. This wasn't the first time she'd faced discrimination, but she'd learned to transform these moments into fuel for something bigger. She'd built her company by solving problems in healthcare, and now she saw another problem that needed solving. The hotel industry clearly needed a shake-up, and who better to do it than someone who understood exactly what needed to change? "Take me to my office," she told her driver, already sending messages to her team. She had research to do, and she had a feeling the Grand Palma's parent company might be an interesting investment opportunity. Sometimes the best revenge wasn't about getting even, it was about getting ahead. Little did the Grand Palma Hotel know, but this seemingly routine act of discrimination would set in motion a chain of events that would transform not just their establishment, but the entire hospitality industry. Maya smiled as she looked back at the hotel through her tinted windows. She'd be back, but next time things would be very different. It was a crisp autumn morning in Atlanta when Maya Richardson stepped out of her sleek black SUV in front of the Grand Palma Hotel. The golden morning sun reflected off the building's towering glass windows, making the hotel sparkle like a jewel against the city skyline. Maya smoothed down her designer blazer, a small gesture of habit rather than necessity, as the valet approached with a practiced smile. At just 38 years old, Maya had built her tech company, Innovate Tech Solutions, from a small startup in her garage to a billion-dollar enterprise that was revolutionizing artificial intelligence in healthcare. Today's technology conference at the Grand Palma wasn't just another meeting, it was meant to be the launching pad for her company's groundbreaking new medical diagnostic system. The hotel lobby was a symphony of luxury. Italian marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and the soft murmur of international guests checking in and out. Maya noticed how other business travelers were being greeted with warm smiles and efficient service. She'd specifically chosen the Grand Palma for its reputation as the city's premier business hotel, having hosted countless high-profile conferences and celebrity guests. Walking up to the front desk, Maya pulled out her phone to show her confirmation email. The reservation associate, a woman with perfectly coiffed hair and a name tag reading Patricia, glanced at Maya's phone screen, then back at her computer, her welcoming smile fading slightly. "I'm sorry, but I'm not seeing any reservation under that name," Patricia said, her fingers tapping purposefully on the keyboard. "Are you sure you have the right hotel?" Maya maintained her professional composure, though she could feel a familiar tightness in her chest. "Yes, I'm certain. I made the reservation myself 3 months ago for the Tech Innovation Summit. I'm one of the keynote speakers." A few feet away, another desk clerk was smoothly checking in a group of executives, handing out room keys with practiced efficiency. Maya couldn't help but notice the difference in treatment. "Perhaps there's been a mistake," Patricia suggested, her voice taking on a condescending tone. "We're fully booked for the conference. All our rooms have been reserved by verified conference attendees." The emphasis on verified wasn't lost on Maya. She'd heard that term before many times throughout her career. It was the same tone she'd encountered when she first pitched her company to investors, when she tried to buy her first luxury car, when she moved into her penthouse apartment. "I understand," Maya said calmly, pulling up additional documentation on her phone. "But as you can see, I have the confirmation email, the booking reference number, and the receipt for payment. I'm scheduled to give the opening address at 9 a.m. tomorrow." A man in an expensive suit, who had been hovering nearby, stepped forward. "Is there a problem here, Patricia?" His gold name badge identified him as Richard Conway, hotel manager. "This woman claims to have a reservation for the conference," Patricia explained, emphasizing the word claims in a way that made Maya's jaw clench. Mr. Conway barely glanced at Maya's phone screen before shaking his head. "I apologize, but as my colleague mentioned, we're fully booked. Perhaps there's been some confusion. I can recommend several other hotels in the area that might be more suitable for your needs." Maya watched as a group of guests walked past, being enthusiastically welcomed by the same staff who were now treating her like an unwanted intruder. The irony wasn't lost on her. Her company's market value was probably more than this entire hotel chain, yet here she was, being dismissed as if she didn't belong. "I see," Maya said quietly, her mind already racing ahead to her next moves. She'd built her empire by turning obstacles into opportunities, and this would be no different. "Could you please provide me with your full name and the contact information for your corporate office?" Mr. Conway's expression tightened. "I think it's best if you leave now. Security can escort you out if necessary." He gestured to two men in dark suits who were already moving in their direction.